And so jumping back to the agency, you mentioned earlier on how it's exclusively with family friendly creators. Is that a big differentiator for you as an agency? Like, I feel like I've never heard of anybody with that specific kind of those rules with the creators they work with. So is that a big differentiator for you in the agency business?
It very much is, because I mean, everyone and their brother, everyone and their sister has an influencer marketing agency these days, because I mean, let's face it, like the barrier to entry is quite low, right? Anyone can throw up a Squarespace page. Anyone can say that they represent influencers non-exclusively. So they can get one brand to convince them to like run their campaigns, and then they go run out there and like email a bunch of influencers to like, hey, this brand wants to work with you, right? So there really is no barrier to entry. On that note, it's very complicated as a brand trying to figure out like, okay, who do I work with? Like, who do I, hire to like help me run this? So that's a whole nother story. But yeah, I mean, that really was the wedge early on. Was like, this is all we're going to do. We're only going to focus on family friendly. And then it's honestly, it's a big enough market, right? There's so many brands that are still quite traditional in the sense that they don't want to like get embroiled in controversy. That this kind of marketing edge has been very effective.
And how do you go about finding the creators to work with? Or do you have essentially at this point, do you have a roster that you know you can go to that you've already vetted? Or how do you go about sourcing influencers for these campaigns?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we definitely have like a roster of folks. Again, like we're non-exclusive. We do not manage anyone exclusively.
Mm.
So they're free to like work with whoever they want. So it's more the kind of thing where we have kind of like a roster of people who have given us permission to essentially pitch on their behalf for opportunities. And ours are it's very actually quite selective, because um as you can imagine, with these types of campaigns, especially family focused, there's oftentimes very, very specific criteria where it's like, we need a mom with kids between the ages of 6 and 12 who lives in like the southeast of the United States or whatever, right? So it's like very, very specific criteria. So oftentimes we will have to go outside of our roster or outside of our network to like find creators who like satisfy this like unicorn, creator that the brand is looking for. And then, at that point, we'll reach out and be like, hey, this is kind of soft gauge interest and availability for a particular campaign. But yeah, it very much is the kind of thing where we have this kind of roster of folks that we have worked with over and over again.
Okay. And are there, with working with family friendly creators and often with families, is there any guidelines or laws you have to worry about with dealing with children that are part of this deal?
Absolutely. So a lot of this has actually developed over the last couple of years. So there's the COPPA compliance guidelines in the United States, which dictates, like what kids can and can't do, or what advertising, messaging, and things like that you can do. It's very actually critical for brands that have products geared towards children. Especially like young children, infants, and toddlers and things like that. So there definitely is requirements. YouTube also has taken an active role in like, limiting monetization, disabling comment sections on certain channels and content that are kid directed. So there was like a big 2, 3 years ago, like tens and thousands of channels got their comment sections disabled, including our family channel, right? So there was like a big swath of channels that kind of got wrapped up in in this, because YouTube over the years has been embroiled in a lot of like brand safety issues where some you know news outlet will do some like expose on like, oh, this crazy you know ISIS video or whatever was running against an AT&T ad or something, right? Like seriously. And then they'll do this thing and YouTube will be like, oh, we're so sorry, right? And they'll disable that channel and then all this stuff, right? And so a similar thing happened to YouTube where there was like literally a handful of channels that were doing some pretty sick things, in terms of like kid directed content. And then so they basically just painted this broad brush and disabled the comment section on tens of thousands of channels. And so yeah, we haven't had a comment section in multiple years. And so yeah, there are definitely, but I will say though that from a brand perspective, every brand's legal team and legal department has their own guidelines of like what creators can and can't do in terms of featuring their product. So like a very common example of this is like, if it's a food, like a kid under 4 can't be in the photo without a parent present or something like that, right? So you can't, you know what I mean? So there's like certain legal compliance things, but those are on the brand level. So it really just depends.
Okay. And I'm curious what kind of managing these different creators are, because this is not exclusive. So you don't actually, like, you're not managing them full time or anything. But I heard you tell a story one time. I can't remember where I heard this story, but you, on occasion, when a brand will come back and give extra edits and stuff that wasn't in the original brief, that's adding more time to the creator, you'll pay the creator additionally out of your own pocket for the extra time that this is now resulting. Not, and for not your fault at all, right? It's the brand adding more work, which I think is awesome. So I'm curious how you kind of approach managing all these different creators that you don't actually manage.
Yeah, so it definitely, so my perspective when I've always approached this is that like, um I am going to ensure that the process is as seamless as possible with the client, with the brand, ultimate client, right? And if that means that we're going to have to do a little bit of extra work that wasn't contracted, so that the overall process of working with Trending Family is just super pleasant, and they think of us the next time they want to run a campaign, I'm going to do that, and even if it means eating into the margin a little bit, right? Because let's face it, like some influencers are very difficult. Some influencers are amazing to work with, right? And you better believe, like, the ones that are amazing to work with and understand that this is just how things go sometimes, that, yeah, there's going to be one more round of edit or that like one more tweak to the caption, right? And they're cool with it. Those are the creators that we continue to push for certain campaigns because it just makes our life that much easier, right? And I think one of the things that I'm trying to do with my Creator Wizard content is help educate creators that they need to look at this thing as a business, right? And understand that if you can look at it from this long-term mindset and understand that if you can help a brand or help an agency out in this one pinch, and yeah, maybe do, this small little edit that takes you literally 2 minutes to do, they're going to remember that. Right. It's one of the things I teach in my course, is like, seriously, like you need to be like a lot smarter about the ways in which you're interacting with your clients who are paying your bills, right? And so yeah, so there are some creators who still just don't get it, but that's something I'm trying to change.
Fair enough. And so, from your perspective, you've been on both sides of brand deals. What leads to the best results from a campaign?
Man, so I think that what leads to the best results is ensuring that the strategy and the influencers that are selected for the campaign align with the campaign goal. So in my experience, there's three main goals for influencer marketing campaigns. So there's conversion, right? Which is where there's some very specific action that the brand is trying to drive. Sales, right? Clicks, downloads, redemption of a coupon, traffic to a website, whatever. So that's conversion focused. Two is content repurposing. That's like a very big type of campaign that a lot of brands do these days where, yes, like, posting the content on the creator's platform is a part of it. It's interesting to them, but what they really want to do is use that content for paid media, right? And turn around and run Facebook ads or Instagram ads or YouTube ads or whatever with that content, right? So that is oftentimes like a growing type of campaign type in my experience. And then there's brand awareness, right? Which is we just want a bunch of eyeballs on this campaign, spread the word, right? And in my experience, every creator is stronger in certain areas. Like some creators are amazing at creating super, super compelling content that people love to watch, but they're not so great at driving sales. You know, they're not super influential in that regard. Same, the converse is true as well. Some creators are amazing. They might be micro creators or micro influencers, but man, they are influential and people buy when they recommend a product. Right. And so I think it really just kind of depends on the campaign goal type. And that's something that we absolutely discuss with our clients at the very outset of any conversation is like, okay, what is success for this campaign? What is a win? Because we are literally going to construct the campaign strategy around that goal.
Is that something you've noticed where micro creators have a higher conversion rate because they have a more tight knit community? Understanding that, I know that as a creator's size gets bigger, obviously their conversion rate's going to decrease just because of how big they are. But kind of taking that into account, have you noticed that micro creators tend to have a higher conversion rate than bigger creators?
Um, I guess it really depends on content vertical, I would say. Because again, like the most important thing to note is that following size is not a good proxy for influence at all, especially in today's landscape. Like, yeah, you could look at engagement rate, for sure. But I think one thing that's really important to note is that followers, comments, likes, engagement can all be purchased inauthentically, right? You can like there's a lot. It's actually a very big problem in my experience these days of people buying likes and buying comments and buying views and all this stuff. So I think brands have not um, gotten up to speed quickly enough in detecting that type of fraudulent behavior. But I think the one of the things that I'm trying to teach creators with my content, with my course and everything, is creating case studies for yourself, right? Asking, the clients that you work with if they can share some of the data from the campaign, whether it's conversions. I know a lot of brands still consider that type of those type of metrics as proprietary, but some don't. Some are like, sure, we'll share with you how many products you sold, or how much traffic you generated, or whatever, and then you can spin that into a case study. So the next time that a brand reaches out to you trying to say like, hey, have you ever done this type of campaign before? You'll be like, yeah, here's a case study, right? So I don't not nearly enough creators think in that way, but that's something I'm trying to help change.
And from the brand side, is it looking for things beyond just metrics like likes, comments, followers, because those things can be bought? Or is it educating brands on how to vet different creators and determine how authentic their following and engagement is?
Yeah, I mean, it's that for sure, but it also is helping them understand that creators are production companies in a box. They're creative services. They are production companies. They have marketing and distribution, right? So it's like they have the ability to do so much and consolidate. Maybe you had an ad agency doing that before, or you had a production company, or you had to go out and hire actors or actresses to like star in this content that you ultimately have to shoot, right? Because most traditional brands are used to having a production budget. Maybe you're going to spend $250,000 on the production, and that doesn't even include the media costs to be able to run it on TV or run it on Instagram or Facebook, or whatever, right? So I think being like that's something I tell creators all the time is like understand the value that you're bringing to them, right? And so I think once brands also understand that there's a lot more they're getting than organic distribution platform with the creator, that helps them understand why it's worth it to hire certain types of creators.
I know this next question, it'll definitely be a case by case basis depending on the creators and the brands, but how do you balance giving creative freedom to the influencer, but want to make sure that the content they're creating is also on brand for the brand? Like what's that balance look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think it's really important to pick the right partners, because there are some creators that are cooler with that than others, right? Understanding that there is this going to be this kind of like back and forth to ensure that the content doesn't feel like an ad read, but at the same time, still gets those sound bites in. And actually, this is actually a really great topic, because most brands have a traditional PR strategy, which is that they will shotgun out hundreds of emails to like offering gifted product, right, to a bunch of creators and see who bites, right? And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that tactic, but if you want control over the content that's ultimately created from that approach, that's when paying an influencer becomes a lot more makes a lot more sense, because then once you're compensating them, there is a certain level of expectation that the influencer needs to have that this is a business transaction, right? They're going to ultimately want a little bit more control over it if they do want those sound bites of like, hey, like go head into your local Walmart to like pick up this product in the grocery section or whatever, right? If you want the influencer to say that so you can cut it into a 30-second ad, like you got to compensate them for that, right? And so I think creators more and more understand that, right? That yes, there is a balance of like not wanting it to sound like an ad, but at the same time, they want to inject their own personality and their own idiosyncrasies into the content to make it engaging. So I think that it's really there. It definitely is a balance of both when you do these types of things.